In this vignette, we want to demonstrate activity scheduling. This vignette assumes that the client and therapist have already done activity monitoring, and the therapist has shown the client how to take an activity chart, which breaks the week out into days and hours, and has monitored activities that they've naturally engaged in over the previous week. Based on the patterns that have been shown through the activity monitoring, the client and therapist discuss valued activities, goals that the client has set, and then work together to consider 2 or 3 doable activities in which the client can commit to engaging over the next week. The client is then asked to write them down, and the therapist and client discuss some possible barriers that could get in the way to increase the likelihood of success. We've learned a lot, Max, from the monitoring that you did last week. And what I'd like to do is actually, I have a clean activity sheet, and would like to look at some of the patterns that we've just talked about and see if there are ways that now we can begin, that you can begin to schedule some activities. As a way of, as we've talked about, taking some steps to get closer to the goals of really getting back on track. Like the big goal is to be back on track with school, because your education is something that you value.
Yeah.
You highly value.
Yeah.
When we act from the outside in and set goals that are consistent with our values, it just in many ways feels better to us when we actually accomplish them, right? What I would like to do is shift with this clean sheet and have you actually plan in a couple of activities over the next week. So when we talk about acting from the outside, this becomes the outside. It literally is outside of us. But also, if you can schedule something in and commit to doing it, regardless of how you feel, that's beginning to take the steps to act toward the outside in. Okay? What's the first problem that you see when I say, when you can take this, put it in a schedule and do it?
Well, I'm just thinking about missing meetings I've had. Like I've scheduled
Right.
things before and I missed them.
Exactly. So it's not just putting something in a schedule as if you're going to magically do it. Again, if you were doing that, you'd be meeting all your appointments with your advisor. So what we have to do is find the activities that would almost be guaranteed that you could be successful at. So they may be very small. What would you like to focus on? Because there are a couple areas where you've said that you really feel like you've just stopped doing things that were really important. Your social life has been really important. That has sort of fallen by the wayside since the breakup, and you're not even going to play soccer. So you're not socializing with your friends as much. You also, education is important. You haven't been meeting with your advisor. It's getting you further back. Family's important, and you're not calling your parents. We can't deal with all of that at once. It's going to be too overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
So do you have some thoughts about what area to focus on over this next week if we're just thinking of 2 or 3 activities that we're then going to have you put in a schedule?
I think school would make the most sense,
Okay.
I guess. It
Okay.
feels like some of those other things don't have quite as much of a time limit. Like if I don't get the ball rolling there, it feels like there could be really grave consequences.
Okay, so we'll focus on school. What aspect? Getting the work done, or trying to start repairing the relationship or start working things out with your advisor? Or maybe a little bit of both, but I don't want to push too
Yeah.
far with this.
I think a little bit of both.
Okay.
Because in some ways it's pretty important to me that that relationship with my advisor is a good one. Like I really
Okay.
respect him, and I really appreciate everything he's done for me up until this point, and so that's really important to me. But at the same time, I sort of don't see how I can repair that relationship until some more work gets done.
Okay. So can I give you this and have you do some writing?
Sure.
Because I'm going to have you write in the times that you're going to do a few activities.
Okay.
So let's talk about in terms of work to get done. What is something that if you got it done, it would, so we could set a high bar and say you get it done, you feel like you really accomplished something. That might be too high. But let's talk about that, and then we'll discuss whether that's too high a bar, because we might just get it a little lower till you get something done, and at least makes it easier to do the next thing, right? One of the things we can say is that just like inactivity sort of breeds inactivity, sometimes you sleep in, as has happened to you, sleeping in on a Saturday, you don't wake up feeling better, you just feel worse and stay back in bed.
Yeah.
By the afternoon, you're groggy and feeling even worse and more
Yeah.
tired. Also, activity breeds activity, right? You start getting some things done, and that can ideally get you on a roll, so to speak. So, let's first talk about what are some of the activities in terms of your work that you would like to try and make some, get moving forward on a little bit.
I do need to be reading more.
You need to be reading more. Okay. Do you have specific reading, like specific articles that you need to read for the dissertation? What is it that you need to read?
Yeah, sort of. It's a combination of articles, like what's kind of the latest research in my field.
Okay.
But also just there's some books at Kirchhoff is our math library
Okay.
that have some things that would probably be useful, but I need to look and see if they would be. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, it sounds like there are a number of steps to doing that, right? One is you think the books might be useful, but you don't know you have to go look to see. They're in the library. They're books, so you can't just get them online. I'm
Yeah.
assuming the journals you can get PDFs online.
Yeah.
Is that right? Do you have those already? Some of the more recent articles you need to read, do you have the PDFs of them?
I have a few, but I also would need to sort of do a search to find out what I've got to
Okay.
kind of look for.
All right. The ones that you have, are they things you need to read, or have you already read the ones you have?
I need to read some of them.
You need to read some of them.
Yeah,
Okay.
so some of them are things that before this summer, I'd planned to read them by the end of the summer to do some of
Okay.
the work that I'm doing now, and I didn't get my summer reading done. So they're
Okay.
like my advisor and committee members recommended some readings.
Okay. All right. So, are there times of the day, like your sleep has been kind of all over the place? Evenings, I'm going to guess, are not great for you if you're still, because one of the things that we talked about that we saw on your schedule is that you're smoking a lot of pot because then you could eat because you haven't had much of an appetite.
Yeah.
Right? If we can assume that you will be still smoking a little bit of pot to eat so you can have an appetite, what's a reasonable time that you're going to be able to be up and ready to do some reading where you can concentrate and so forth the next day? What time of day?
Yeah. I teach calculus at 1 on Tuesdays,
Okay.
and I have some things I have to do at Kirchhoff in the morning to get ready to teach class.
Okay.
But usually I sort of take a break between when I'm prepping the class and doing the class, and I could probably read in that break time.
Okay. So, and you haven't missed any of your calculus classes, right?
No, yeah, that
Yeah.
would be, that if I started, that would be pretty, that would get me in like trouble with the department at that
Right.
point.
So that's really great because that's one area where you already continue to act from the outside in, right? So, you said it's on Thursdays? So we're looking at Thursday here.
Yeah, Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Tuesdays and Thursdays. Okay, so we know you got calculus at 1 o'clock. And you said you have to do some things to prepare,
Yeah.
and then you would, between that and teaching,
Yeah.
is when you would actually do some reading.
Yeah, I can try, yeah.
Okay. Reading or looking up the articles? Let's go back to what steps you're going to take, because we want to just make sure that we almost can guarantee that you're going to be able to do this.
Yeah. I think before you said that, I was thinking maybe like to find new articles and things like that, but
Okay.
I feel like most of the legwork's been done on the reading. Like, those articles have been recommended, I've downloaded the PDFs, and at that point it's like just click them open and read them.
Okay, but you said you're going to be at the library, right, before teaching?
Oh, I will be in the building with the library, yeah.
So, and you also said there are some books you need to look at,
Mm-hmm.
and you can only see those in the library. Would it make sense to try and find a couple of those books and just browse through them to see if they're going to be useful for you?
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. I could tell him that I look up the books, and if I found a chapter that'd be useful, I could ask him if he thinks it would be useful, like get his feedback on it.
Okay, 'cause that's great. I was sort of thinking maybe the same thing. Would that make it easier for you to contact him? If you knew you had something like that briefly to talk to him about?
Yeah, that'd be really helpful actually, because it's sort of like not just saying I'm lost.
Right,
It's
okay.
sort of like asking for specific advice.
Okay, and how would you communicate that?
I'm not sure I understand. Maybe.
So you've sent him emails.
Mhm.
It seems like email is the way you've been contacting him. Is that enough, or would you want to stop by his office and maybe even show him the chapter?
I would want to just send an email.
You'd want to just send an email.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to suggest that you do something that's too hard,
Mhm.
but I do want to just ask you, would sending him an email, is that because that would be something that would be working toward that goal and within your value of wanting to have a good relationship with people generally, but also the goal of having a good relationship with your advisor and repair some of the difficulties that have happened lately? Or would sending the email be mood dependent because you feel guilty and a little ashamed?
I think it's kind of both.
It's kind of both?
Yeah.
Okay. What could make it more of the on the repair side than on the guilt side if you sent the email?
I guess I could send an email saying I found the chapter and then asking if he'd want to follow up in person
Okay.
to talk about it, or if he thought it was fruitful if we could follow up in person.
Okay. So you'd be requesting sort of a step forward to actually meet in person.
Yeah.
Okay, when will you send that email?
If I look up the books at 11 to 11:30.
It doesn't need to be on
Yeah.
the same day. It doesn't need to be on the Tuesday. If you wanted to
Yeah.
do that some other day.
Maybe that'd be a good idea for Thursday, because that
Okay.
would give me,
Oh, during that same time?
yeah.
Oh, great.
Because
Okay.
then if he says he does want to meet, then I know I at least have my stuff in Kirchhoff,
Right.
and I'll be where the books are if he
Great.
wants to look at them.
Good. So why don't you put that in on Thursday?
Okay.
Let's see how this goes. And we'll talk next time about just what the impact is of this, of doing these two small things.
Does this seem like enough?
I think, well, you tell me, does it seem like enough to you?
Yeah, it's sort of like yes and no, right?
Yeah. I think, is this achieving all of your goals? No. Is this getting you started back on a trajectory that's the opposite direction, sort of an upward cycle instead of a downward cycle? Yes, I think this is enough for that.
Yeah, it's like, I guess what I'm thinking is these seem hard, like especially the email seems really
Right.
hard to
Right.
do. Actually, even looking at the book seems pretty hard, but it's like there's just all this empty space where I don't have anything planned, and it just feels like these two little spots.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And you've had a lot of empty space with nothing planned, and you haven't even done these two things. These two things are really hard. I think this is enough. I think this is beginning to take some steps to move in the right direction.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And we'll see next week.
Okay.
All right. Great.
Thanks.
What did you notice about how the therapist worked with Max to plan activities? What strategies did the therapist use to increase the likelihood that activities would occur? How might you work with a client who sets overly ambitious or infeasible goals?
In this vignette, we've seen how the therapist and client work together to schedule activities. Common concerns such as that the activities will not be enough came up. Max was concerned that he really had a lot more to do than just go to the library or just send an email to his advisor. It's important for BA therapists to recognize that activity scheduling happens in steps, and we can acknowledge with clients that they have overall goals that are far bigger than what we assign in any given week. However, in order to break out of the depressive cycle, we need to break down the activities small enough so that clients can actually succeed at doing them. The goal is for success in the activities to which the client has committed. The goal is not to complete everything that the client would like to do in a given week. It is important to discuss and do some brief problem solving around possible barriers that could come up that will prevent the client from actually succeeding in the activities.